Anders. Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to the third seminar organized by the Riot Science Club Norway. I'll be hosting this seminar together with my colleague Anders Nordal Hansen from the Riot Norway team. Just a few things before we start with our main event. First, briefly about the Riot Science Club for the newcomers. The Riot Science Club is a self-organizing initiative. We host weekly seminars that aim to provide training in reproducible, interpretable, open, and transparent science. All our events are free and open to anyone. If you'd like to keep track of upcoming events, please check out our website, Twitter, OSF, and our YouTube channel. We'll put all these links in the chat in a second. And Anders, would you like to say a few words about housekeeping?
Yes, just before we introduce the guest speaker, you can ask questions in the Q&A message board you see on the bottom of the screen. The questions will be moderated by Tamara and myself, and we will the questions will be fed to the speaker after at the end of the talk. Yes. Thanks.
Thanks, Anders. And now to our main event. I have a pleasure to introduce our special guest for today. Dr. Charlotte Pennington is a lecturer in psychology at Aston University with research interest in addictive behaviors and social cognition. Charlotte has a passion for methodology, open science, and reproducibility. She conducts work on the reliability of experimental measures with a view to improving ways to measure human behavior. She is also involved in several meta research projects evaluating the effectiveness of study preregistration. Charlotte is Aston's local network lead of the UK Reproducibility Network and serves on the editorial boards of Addiction Research and Theory and Peer Community and Register Reports. And in addition to this, what I think is really exciting about Charlotte is that she's currently writing a book named A Student's Guide to Open Science, using the Replication Crisis to reform psychology, which she aims to submit in a couple of months. I hope we can have some time to talk about this book by the end of the seminar. We'll see. Now I'll hand over to Charlotte.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tamara. That was a really nice introduction. So today I'm going to be talking to you about registered reports, and I might go over a few things that Tamara's just said, just to introduce myself a little bit more and what really got me interested in registered reports, but more generally open science and open scholarship reform. I'm hoping to do this within about 40 minutes, but I do love talking. But I'll try to be quite quick, but also clear, and then open the board later for questions and discussion. I think people might get quite excited about Registered Reports 2.0, and all of that will become clear as I go through the talk. So just a little bit more about who I am. So I'm a lecturer in psychology at Aston University, and Aston are fantastic in that they have an open research team, and they've always really endorsed what I do, and they give me the time to do this, which is really nice. However, in previous years, I actually grew up in the replication crisis era. So I did my PhD in experimental social psychology in 2016. That's when I graduated. And my PhD thesis examined, or tried to examine, the mechanisms that underpinned the stereotype threat performance relationship. And I had a hell of a time as a student trying to replicate the basic stereotype threat effects whilst reading beautiful papers, multi-study, 9 experiment papers that had seamless, beautiful results and a lovely story. And I had a really hard time during my PhD designing experiments, finding floor or ceiling effects, and it was really, really tough. And I must admit that it made me feel like a crappy researcher. and I didn't know whether I would stay in the field of psychology because I thought it was me. I didn't realise that it was the tip of the iceberg. I then joined Lancaster University and I started hearing about the replication crisis and open science, and it seemed to answer a lot of questions and doubts that I had, and it really, really made me excited. And during all of this, I changed research fields. So I was lucky enough during my PhD to have a lot of side studies going on. And my PhD supervisor, Derek Heim, is an expert alcohol researcher. So I was always doing things and getting involved in that research. And now my main area of research is actually addictive behaviours. So I'm glad that I had that as the fallback. As Tamara said, I've got a real passion for open scholarship and methodological rigour. So trying to do things better and trying to continually improve. I'm the local network lead for Aston of the UKRN. And again, as Tamara said, I'm an editor of registered reports for both addiction research and theory and peer community in. And I think it's important to tell you that again, because I'm both an editor, but also an author of registered reports. And I suppose that comes with a little bit of bias as well. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the problems in research. This is going to be very brief because I'm sure that we all know this now. I then want to move on to study pre-registration and look at some of the emerging evidence for its effectiveness. Then doing the same for registered reports, and then giving you the newness, which is peer community in registered reports, which is an initiative that was launched only in April 2021. We'll then have time for questions, and I'll share my slides with supplementary resources so that you can have a go at being an author of registered reports if you haven't already done so. Okay, so a recent history into the replication crisis. In 2005, Ioannidis published why most psychology findings, but it wasn't psychology, why most published research findings are false. And this got a lot of people talking, and it was quite a flashy statement. And I think that a lot of people thought it could be over-exaggerated, but what was to come really told us that this might be true. So in 2011, something that kind of kicked off the replication crisis was Bem's famous article in JPSP, which provided evidence, so-called evidence of precognition. At the same time, Diedrich Staples was found guilty of academic misconduct, and Simmons et al. Showed how analytical flexibility in the data that we have and acquire allows people to present anything as significant, so started to look at certain questionable research practices within the field of psychology and beyond. In 2012, John et al. Revealed that QRPs were prevalent, and Paschler and Wagenmakers started talking about a potential crisis in the special issue of Perspectives on Psychological Science. This got a lot of people questioning, are psychological findings just simply too good to be true? And in 2014, we had the first large-scale replication attempt in psychology, which was Many Labs 1, and that seemed to show a 77% replication success. So quite optimistic at this point, thinking, okay, we're doing well as a field in psychology. But there were concerns because the replications that were picked were effects that were known to be quite replicable anyway. So it could have been a problem of the studies that were selected for replication. Then came the big one. So in 2015, the Open Science Collaboration published their replications of 100 randomly selected studies from 4 of the top journals in psychology, and found that there was only a 36% success rate, so successful replications in the same direction, and effect sizes seem to have halved. This made news, and later on in 2016, Baker encouraged 1,500 scientists across STEM, psychology, the natural scientists to lift the lid on the crisis. And psychology realised that we weren't alone and we were in this together. So let's think about what science should be. So if we look at the Mertonian rules, we know that science should be underpinned by the following. So it should be about communality. It's about being open, transparent and sharing. It should be about universalism. So we should evaluate research based on its own merits. It should be disinterested. So we should be motivated by our own knowledge and discovery and not anything else. Organised skepticism. So we should update our beliefs based on the new evidence, not have too strong priors based on our own theories, and we should update things in the face of new evidence. We should question, okay, how strong is that result? Will it replicate? And what happens if it doesn't? Don't be too tied down to our favoured theories and our favoured empirical studies. But what we now know and how it is currently is that science is historically been underpinned by secrecy, so closed science. It's been about particularism, so evaluating research by reputation. It's about self-interestedness, so we treat science as a competition. Our promotion is based on quantity rather than quality. It's about who has the most esteem, who is well known in the field. It's about organised dogmatism, so we invest in promoting our own work and don't really favour or celebrate the successes of others because it's competitive, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And what happens is that we tend to have a focus on quantity, this publish or perish mentality, and we overlook quality. So in the past, we have not published methodologically rigorous work, and we really need to refocus on thinking about important questions for theory and application, rather than the sexiness of results, which is what historically journals have wanted. So this means that what's good for scientists isn't good for science. And this is a huge problem because with incentive structures, we can see that these have influenced questionable research practices, and we find ourselves in the so-called crisis. And I hope that we're coming out of that and we'll see the other side. So instead of playing the game, it's time to change the rules. So quite a well-known quote now from Chambers in 2014. If we don't want to play this game of Monopoly, we want to really be passionate about good science, about transparent and open science, we simply have to change the rules. And this is where open science comes in. So open science and open scholarship has many practices that you may be well familiar with now, such as study preprints, pre-registration, open code, materials and data, and of course, registered reports. And I'm just going to focus today on study pre-registration and registered reports. So study pre-registration is a public time-stamped outline of what you plan to do. So these are the research questions, your hypotheses, the method, and the analysis prior to data collection, or in the case of secondary data analysis, prior to analysis. And study pre-registration can be initiated for both quantitative and qualitative research, as well as primary and secondary data. And there's a lot of templates out there now, particularly on the Open Science Framework, that can help researchers to do this. And pre-registration is proposed to distinguish better confirmatory prediction from exploratory findings, which are known as post-diction. You can make it public immediately or embargo it, so there's no barriers around that. And you can also submit your pre-registration as supplementary material, either as a direct link within your manuscript or as supplementary for unmasked peer review. So again, one barrier around study pre-registration or having worked as an editor in this field, is that people don't feel like they can share it if it's masked peer review because they think that they'll be identified. However, you can create a masked pre-registration via the OSF and share that with your peer reviewers and the readers until you need to. And of course, study pre-registration is a plan, it is not a prison. And there will be times where we naturally have to deviate from our plans, unexpected problems might occur. And a myth around pre-registration is that it ties you in chains, but this is not true. And actually, you can deviate so long as you are transparent about that and you provide the rationale to the reader and the editor and reviewers so that they can make their own decision about whether or not that was the right thing to do. The emergent evidence on pre-registration suggests that the proposal is that it distinguishes between exploratory and confirmatory research, which in the past, researchers just haven't been good at doing. It can reduce or make transparent outcome switching and selective reporting, so it has the potential to reduce certain questionable research practices. And there's also the proposition that it can reduce publication bias because although you can't guarantee the publication of that study, having the pre-registration openly available allows it to be discovered. So we can start to see, okay, how many studies were pre-registered that were then not published? And it gives us a glimpse into that pre-registration room. However, pre-registration is not perfect. So we see from a lot of recent meta-research papers that actually there's still a lot of discrepancies between the pre-registration and the final manuscript. So the TARG meta-research group in 2021 did a systematic review and meta-analysis looking at discrepancy in primary outcomes from pre-registration to the manuscript, and they found between 10% to 68% of these discrepancies. Now, people say that that is a fault of pre-registration, and I actually disagree there. I think that's a fault of researchers themselves, potentially either knowingly or unknowingly gaming pre-registration or not being trained and educated in the best way. I don't think it's a problem of pre-registration in itself, more the researchers. We also find, however, that not many peer reviewers actually check pre-registration. So Matthew in 2013 and colleagues, they found that only 1/3 of reviewers actually check. And this is really problematic because if there are discrepancies and underreporting, then they're not found within the peer review process. And currently, there's no standards for publishing the discrepancies. So you might want to put supplementary material in to say, this is what here's why I deviated and why. But currently, there's no standard template. However, groups of researchers, such as the TARG meta-research group and others, are creating new ways of improving study pre-registration. And I think this is really nice. It shows the benefit of meta-research. Open science is still quite recent, but already we're seeing the ways to continuously improve our practices. So on to registered reports. So registered reports can overcome a lot of the limitations of vanilla pre-registration, and they are seen as the gold standard currently within our field. So they were proposed in 2012 to free researchers from the pressures of engaging in these counterproductive research practices. And in stage 1, researchers submit their introduction, methods and analysis plan, and this undergoes peer review. And again, this is before data collection or analysis. And if the reviewers find that the study is rigorous enough, that it's good, it's high quality, then the authors, gain what is known as in-principle acceptance, IPA. And this is where the journal itself guarantees to publish the study, regardless of the results, so long as that accepted protocol is followed. And you can see here how we're getting over the limitations of pre-registration because the reviewers are directly involved. They are vetting the protocol and they are checking that the authors adhered to the protocol or that they clearly state why they didn't and have that approved. Then in stage 2, the authors go back, they've collected or analysed their data at this stage, they've written their results and discussion, they append that onto their first stage 1 protocol and they resubmit. And the fantastic thing about registered reports is that now the focus is away from the results. It doesn't matter about the results, and it's about methodological rigour and accurate reporting. And I just think this is a fantastic initiative that can really mitigate the problems that we've seen in science so far. So how do they help? Well, registered reports are meant to be more reproducible because they're very detailed. They have repeatable methods. The procedure is clear. It should enhance replication attempts. And they typically have larger definitive sample sizes because a lot of the editorial policies and the instructions to authors suggest that they should be high-powered experimental studies. And in the case of qualitative research, you have a robust plan around your sampling still. They're also transparent, so they come accompanied by open materials and data. And this is a great step compared to typical journal articles where you get data available on request. And we all know what happens when we try to request that data. And they can disentangle confirmatory and exploratory hypotheses. So these are actually transparently stated within the manuscript itself. And they're also credible. So they are proposed to mitigate publication bias, hindsight bias, and remove the need for selective reporting. So the incentives completely change for the authors and the researchers. But let's look at the emerging empirical evidence. So very recent studies, but let's see whether these proposals actually work in practice. So what we can see in terms of publication bias is that registered reports seem to be working as intended. In the general medical and scientific literature, hypotheses are 5 times more likely to be unsupported in registered reports compared with regular articles. And in psychology specifically, we find that the percentage of positive results is around 43%, compared to a shocking 96% in the traditional literature, which shows that actually registered reports are halving publication bias. Hummer et al. In 2017 as well looked at journal citations, so how well do registered reports do compared to other studies which arguably might have questionable but sexier results because journals have wanted studies to sell their findings and researchers have done that as well. And what they found is that registered reports are well cited at or above their respective journal impact factor. So another benefit for authors is that the citations are great, people trust them, they're credible, and they cite your papers. And Soderberg in 2021 showed how they can enhance study quality, so perceptions of study quality as well. So one of the main proposed barriers around registered reports is that they might stifle discovery or novelty. So people say, well, what if I have a really risky hypothesis? Or what if I want to explore my data and just discover new things? Then actually, aren't you ruining science with registered reports? And the answer is emphatically no. So a new paper by Soderberg masked registered reports and standard articles and asked reviewers to rate them based on their rigour, their quality, their novelty and their creativity. And what they found is that registered reports overall were seen as more rigorous, better quality, with no differences in novelty or creativity. And this is a fantastic paper that shows the benefits again of registered reports. As well, registered reports might allow researchers to actually test riskier hypotheses, because if they have really good theory, or if they have really good methods and a robust analysis plan, then they can test those hypotheses and they can still explore the data. They just need to be transparent in what they're doing. So that's a plus for science. However, people do still see potential barriers around registered reports. One of the main challenges is time pressure. So because your proposal has to undergo stage 1 review, it might be quite challenging if you need to collect data quickly, or if you are under time pressures where you need to get started with data collection as soon as possible. We've also found that between different journals, the standards of registered reports and their editorial practices and reviewing practices can differ quite greatly. So there's different editors, there's different reviewers, different journals offer them. And this creates heterogeneity in registered report implementation and their evaluation. And that can be quite tricky. If you get fantastic editors and reviewers, great. If not, you run into problems. And again, one of the perceived barriers by authors and researchers is that you're tied to a journal. You have to submit your protocol to a journal of your choice. But then if your stage 1 is rejected, there's a time lag where you need to try other journals. And all of this is seen as quite scary and daunting for researchers, who many are on precarious time-pressured contracts as well. Okay then, the exciting part. So let's turn registered reports on their head and let's remove the journal. And this is where peer community in registered reports happens. So peer community in, PCI for short, registered reports was launched in April 2021. And this is a dedicated community who receive, review and recommend registered reports across the full spectrum of STEM, medicine, the social sciences and humanities. Stage 1 and 2 preprints are reviewed independently of journals. So here's the first game changer. You submit your stage 1 protocol as a preprint, for example, on the Open Science Framework. You log into the peer community in registered reports website. You provide the link to your preprint stage 1 manuscript, and it goes from there. The reviewers and recommenders pick it up and they review the preprints instead. Now, PCI RR is a non-profit, non-commercial platform that coordinates the peer review of these preprints, and I think it's a game changer. So here's the process. It's a little bit tricky to see in this figure, and I'll go through it with you. You submit your stage 1 registered report to a repository of your choice. This can be the OSF, it can be GitHub. You log into the website and you upload your manuscript. And at this point, the managing board and the recommenders, who are action editors, review your stage 1 manuscript. And if it meets our instructions to authors, if it meets our guidelines and review criteria, it's then sent out for review. If not, it could be sent back to you with either a desk reject or the decision to revise and resubmit. So you've got to go along with the guidelines, of course, but then your stage 1 proposal, if judged favourably by the managing board and recommenders, is sent out for peer review. And it's peer reviewed by experts in the field. You can recommend them and the recommenders will look for people as well. And then you get revisions, or you might, if you're lucky enough, it might be accepted outright, but you typically get revisions. And If you then satisfy the reviewer's comments, your registered report is recommended. And what this means is it's posted on the Peer Community In website saying that you've got in principle acceptance and your stage 1 manuscript has been recommended. And I'll go through this more in a little while. You then go off and collect your data or analyse the results, append your stage 2 manuscript to stage 1, again via a OSF repository or a preprint repository, and it's then evaluated again. If you've stuck to your protocol, regardless of the results, your paper is then accepted by Peer Community In registered reports. So in stage 1, as I said, you've submitted your questions, your plan, your analysis, and you can do this for both quantitative and qualitative research. Now, the great thing about registered reports in general, but also PCI registered reports, is that we cannot make subjective judgments about the importance, novelty, or timeliness of your research question. Instead, we look at the following 5 criteria, and this is what you should try to answer and do when submitting via this route. So here, we're looking at the scientific validity of a research question. Is it grounded in theory or models, for example? We're looking at the plausibility and the rationale for your hypotheses. If applicable, you can also have research questions. We're looking at the feasibility and the soundness of your methodology and your design. We're also checking that you have a good analysis pipeline, that there's no potential for undisclosed flexibility. We also want to check for the absence of floor or ceiling effects, or ensuring that you're able to test those hypotheses. So, for example, manipulation checks or attention checks. And what this creates is just a really robust study in the first place that can reliably test scientific hypotheses or research questions without anybody having to worry if the results go in the way that you might want them to or might not. So it really takes that focus away from the results, and it's about designing the most rigorous experiments or studies. So as I say, if your stage 1 protocol is accepted, then the recommender, action editor, writes a recommendation and posts this on the PCI website, along with the reviews and the responses. So everything is open, everything is transparent, and this allows it to be cited as well. So stage 1 manuscripts and also reviewer comments, for example, can be cited through a DOI. And again, this is just a great feature of this platform. And if you're worried about your data collection and you want this embargoed, then you simply just say that to PCI registered reports, and your study remains embargoed for how long you need it to. So again, they've kind of thought about all of the potential barriers and mitigated this from the get-go. So you might be thinking, okay, this sounds quite interesting, a little bit exciting, but I might do it, I might not. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you the real game changer that I think comes with this. But here are some examples of recommended stage 1 protocols so far, and there's many coming through the pipeline. And given that it was only April when this took off, I'm really excited for how quickly people recognise the value of PCI registered reports and how many articles we're actually getting to review. Okay. So after completing the research, you just append the stage 1 manuscript. And the important thing here is that when the reviewers review your stage 2 manuscript, they cannot go over the theory and hypotheses again. They can't become concerned all of a sudden about the methods upon seeing the results. So this prevents knowledge of the results from influencing any reviewer or editorial decisions. So again, it's protecting researchers and protecting authors. Okay, here's the game changer. So upon stage 2 acceptance, authors can then choose to publish from a list of PCI-friendly journals that will accept your registered report without the need for additional peer review. So now the authors are back in control and they decide where to send that stage 2 manuscript. And I was quite excited about this anyway, but I'll tell you about my experience in a minute. But so far, there are a lot of journals joining, and there are a lot of journals expressing their interest, and we are getting more and more week upon week. So one of my own journals, Addiction Research and Theory, they will accept stage 2 manuscripts without the need for additional peer review because it's been done by PCI registered reports. It's been outsourced. So an advantage for the journal as well is that their peer review is actually outsourced and they don't need to worry about that anymore. We've also got BMJ Open Science, F1000 Research, PeerJ, Royal Society Open Science. There are many, many journals that are joining as PCI friendly journals. Now I'll go over the benefits in a second, but I just wanted to say about my own experience. So as an author of PCI registered reports as well, we had a stage 1 acceptance, and then I got emails from journals actually saying, we really like your study and we'd like to publish it within our journal. So it completely knocks everything on its head, because now you're not submitting or trying to find a journal, the journals are coming to you. And I hope that people are as excited as I am and the PCI board are about this. Now, another benefit of PCI registered reports is that they're considered for all stages of research. There's different levels. So level 6 at the top here, you can see, is very, very low risk of bias. In fact, it's 0. And this is where you don't have your data yet. You've not collected any data. You therefore can't have observed any of the key variables. You've not analysed anything, and the data isn't accessible. And then you go down the stages from 6 to 1. But you can also submit to PCI registered reports if you've got access to the data, even if you've looked at some of the variables. So reading this, you can see, for example, at level, let's take level 2, for example, the data already exists, the data are accessible, the data have been accessed, some of it has already been observed, but the key variables have not. And crucially, it hasn't been analysed, okay? So the risk of bias goes from 0 or very low to very high, but it means that registered reports can be considered for all types of research, so long as you are transparent about that. And at this point, it's also worth checking the journal that you want to go to see what their level of bias is as well. Okay, so different journals will have different levels of bias. Addiction Research and Theory, for example, are level 2, so they're quite lenient, but some of them are a lot stricter and might have level 5 or level 6 in place. Okay, so I'm nearly done, guys, and we can discuss. So again, people might be thinking, well, what if you're under time pressure? This is just a new spin of registered reports. But another game changer is something known as scheduled peer review. And this is where the authors submit a 1-page snapshot of the study they intend to do. And then this is triaged by a recommender. And if it passes the triage, it's then the recommender then organises the peer review process to happen at a certain date in the future. And then peer reviewers say, yep, we've blocked out our diary for that, we're ready to go. And you can get stage 1 peer review in a really crunched timeline. So for example, within a week. And this is great because you can you therefore don't have any of these time pressure challenges anymore. You've scheduled peer review takes place, and then you've got your in principle acceptance after revisions quite quickly. So again, a way around this, which is fantastic. So what are the benefits of PCI registered reports compared to the traditional model of registered reports? You can see in this table here, some of them are, they offer pre-study peer review. They offer this scheduled review that I don't know of any traditional journals, RR or not, who are offering this. Peer reviews undertaken independently of a journal. The researchers get to choose where they submit afterwards on stage 2 acceptance. They're free for authors and readers forever, because even if you then publish in a paywalled journal, the reviews and the manuscript are available on a preprint server and also via the PCI RR website. And there's just many different benefits here that you can see. So as an editor and reviewer and as an author, I have seen firsthand the benefits of this. And I'm also a reviewer and editor of traditional articles, so non-registered reports. And I do see a real difference in quality, methodological rigour. So as an editor and reviewer, I am seeing that registered reports submitted are well written. They're usually very clear. They've been well thought out from the get-go. They have robust methodology. They have thorough design and analysis. And as an author, I've had exceptionally constructive peer review. It's been friendly. They've wanted to really help me design a study. And looking back and reflecting on the first draft of our stage 1 and then its accepted draft, it was fantastic. Even if it hadn't have been accepted and I'd have implemented those reviewer comments, I had a better design study already. So yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me. Improved methodology. It really gets you thinking about potential confounds. Do you need any positive controls? How are you going to assess your data quality, ensure that your data has high quality? And then, regardless of the results, these things all kind of link together to create stronger papers and a stronger scientific literature. So just with registered reports then, there are things to consider to enhance your chances of success, both with registered reports and PCI. So if you have hypotheses rather than research questions, these should be grounded in theory. And PCI registered reports require an explanation of how the theory might be actually shown wrong by your outcomes. And there's a little table that you can fill in, and it's fantastic because it asks questions and it gets you thinking about, okay, so how do I actually falsify that theory? What would that look like? Journals ask for high power, so typically 80% or 90%, to maximise the chances that an effect of interest is detected. And they'll also ask you to think about your smallest effect size of interest. And as well, thinking about methodological rigour. So journals typically require positive controls or data quality checks to enhance the severity of your hypothesis testing. And I just think all of this is great for science. So it's good to design studies that can do this, and to adopt Frith, who said that we need the push towards slow science. Okay, take home messages, and then I'll open the board to questions. So we now know that we have problems in science, and I've italicized this because it's not just psychology. Many scientific disciplines are experiencing and facing problems in transparency. We know that pre-registration can aid transparency and it can potentially reduce questionable research practices, but specificity and undisclosed deviations remain a serious problem in their implementation. Registered reports present a potential solution. Early emerging empirical evidence, however, they do seem to be more reproducible because they ask for the data code materials, for example. They're more transparent because now it's about being detailed and clear, and they are seen and perceived as more credible by peer reviewers and readers. Potential barriers to your typical registered reports include time and journal differences. And this is where PCI registered reports comes in, and they review and recommend preprints. They're more streamlined. They mitigate time pressures through the scheduled peer review. And most importantly for me, which I'm still excited by journals, you can choose the journal, so the authors are back in control. So we've opened the door to a new era of open science, open scholarship, and also a new way of publishing. And this is why we tend to call PCI registered reports 2.0. I'm now going to open for questions, but I will share my slides, and there's many supplementary resources, videos, and there's a link to the guidelines for PCI registered reports as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte, for your very interesting presentation on these matters that are really important. We have we have a couple of questions already, or one from Sam Westwood, which is the Rise Science, one of the founder. So he says it's not a question really. He says, Sam W here with a comment, not a question. You might find this blog you post interesting. It's an exchange between big names in psychology and psychiatry by Sophie Scott and Time Chalice, banging the anti-pre-registration drum. And then the link to that blog. My favorite is that pre-registration would make science boring. Do you agree? No.
I disagree. For complete transparency, I must say that I really do like study pre-registration. I know that it's got its flaws, but as I said in the talk, I actually think that it's the flaws of the researchers themselves rather than that practice. So when we're seeing undisclosed deviations, for example, that might be because the researchers themselves are being sloppy, or that we just need more training and education about how well to write pre-registrations and what they should contain. So I am an advocate of pre-registration, and I think they work really well at times, for example, student projects where you might be under time pressure, but you might want to teach them about open and reproducible science. So I do really like them. Pre-registration would make science boring. This really troubles me because science and scientists should be about the pursuit of truth. And if that means that things are boring, then so be it. Do we really want these sexy findings that are kind of like the glamour magazines that sell but don't mean anything? And as a human being, I want to know about us and about human behaviour. So if it's boring, then so be it. Maybe we're boring, I don't know. But I don't see that as a good justification, really. And the Soderbergh paper shows that actually registered reports are seen as no less credible, no less exciting than the traditional literature. So I think that's a really good rebuttal, perhaps, of that comment.
And just to make that clear, it's not Sam that means this. It's more like the point made that sees.
We should read the blog.
And just to big Sam up here as well, he was part of the Meta Research 2021 paper on the systematic review of discrepancies. So I know for sure that that's not Sam saying that.
Let's move on to another question from Agatha. Do you want to take that, Tamara?
Yeah, sure. So Agatha is asking, in the PCI registered reports model, wouldn't authors go most often or only for most prestigious journals, leaving smaller or less known journals behind?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm not sure if I can fully answer it. I'll give it a good shot. So the first thing to note is with peer community in, the author does not even need to choose a journal. If they want to have it on peer community in registered reports for its lifetime, that is it published in itself. So they don't even need to go to the next step of choosing a journal. However, a lot of us are under incentive pressures still, and we have universities or kind of bigger pressures around where do you publish and the quality of where you publish. And I suppose, and I must admit that I've done this, you go for what you believe to be most prestigious in your field. What I hope is a bigger shift within publishing and within knowledge of open science and transparency, where actually the things that make those journals prestigious, so the impact factor, their recognition, hopefully we see a shift in those dynamics as well. There are certain journals out there that don't have the highest impact factor, for example, prestige, one potential thingy of prestige. But actually I would choose them because they focus on rigour and quality, and they have open peer review, or they have or that they're open access. So again, some of the prestigious journals, it's all behind paywalls, so you can make that decision. I think the benefit is that it puts the author in control. It's a really good point actually, because I was going to say that people have that choice anyway. In a non-registered report format, you tend to choose where you want to go. However, you're more likely to be rejected if you go for the big guns. So I'm not sure. I might ask Chris Chambers that one, because that's a question. He tends to know all the answers, but that is a really nice one that I've not thought about yet. I'm sorry I can't answer it better.
Thanks Charlotte. The next question from Torun. Thank you so much for an interesting and thorough presentation. And my question is, how do you plan to include even more journals in this initiative?
Again, fantastic question. So we tend to find that journals are seeing what we're saying about PCI registered reports. And when an article is recommended, we tweet about it, and we do a lot of things that mean that it's discoverable if the authors want it. So journals are asking questions and thinking, oh, what is this initiative? And they tend to be reading about it, which is great. We also have a lot of efforts going on in the background where we will tell journals about it. So for example, Addiction Research and Theory became a PCI friendly journal after hearing about this initiative. And the benefit for the journal is that they're outsourcing peer review. So PCI registered reports has its own managing board and editorial board, and its own reviewers as well. And anyone can sign up to be a reviewer of PCI registered reports. But this is great for the journal, because in my sideline at Addiction Research and Theory as well, where I am the one trying to solicit the peer reviews and do all of that in the background, it's really difficult, and it's time consuming. So for a journal, I think that's a real benefit that they get that for free, basically. And I think given that it's only been around since April 2021, we should see exponential growth of PCI friendly journals. And that's exactly what we saw with registered reports. They were quite slow to start off with, and now they've grown. So I think it's more about getting the word out there, and also getting authors and researchers to know about it, because I've got a journal in my head which I would love for them to offer this, and they don't. And that kind of just puts me off that journal now as well. So I think it's more about discoverability and reach. So having these discussions, talking about it, getting in touch with journals and seeing whether they want to join or not. And some don't want to join, and that's their choice.
Great, thanks, Charlotte. The next question: can I submit to PCI registered reports and another journal simultaneously in case the journal I'm interested in is not yet PCI registered reports friendly? If not, what's your recommended chain of actions?
Okay, so the answer is no. So it works as traditionally, where if you submit to PCI registered reports, your paper shouldn't be under review or submitted elsewhere. It's a really good point if you've got a journal in mind, and you want to go there. I thought this myself. I thought I could write the paper that I had stage 1 acceptance of. I could write that as a full paper. I could just pre-register it, and I might have a pretty good chance of going to a journal of my choice anyway. If I make it robust, if I make it a good study, I might have a chance. But then I thought about what I wanted to be as a researcher as well. So kind of detaching myself from journals and thinking, who do I want to be? And I want to do the best science. So at that point, I actually thought, I'll take a chance here, and I might not go to the most prestigious journal, but I'll go to one that really endorses transparency, rigour, and aligns with my morals and my image. So it might be worth thinking about that as well. There is a journal in my field that is top, but is still not really wriggling with these movements. And again, I thought, should I publish there, or should I go down the PCI registered reports route? And for me now, knowing how much the registered reports route enhanced that study and really helped us, we would have been very stressed out at the results stage when we looked at our design, our initial design. There were too many comparisons, it was quite messy, and the reviewers helped us to think about that more. So actually knowing now about that peer review process and how much it's strengthened my research, for me, it would be the PCI registered reports route or the registered reports route. But again, this is your choice, and that's a nice thing. It's about what you want to do and the kind of decisions that you make down that road.
Question from Phil McAleer. Great talk, thanks. It says, registered reports also serve as a brilliant teaching approach. Allow students to focus on just intro and methods when starting out and not all the other bits. Just wondering if you had any thoughts on how to convince people to teach more RR at undergrad than writing full reports. Seems good way to make them common practice ground up.
Absolutely, I agree wholeheartedly. The registered report we've just done is with my master's students. The benefits there is that they're going to enter their career with a publication, guaranteed, regardless of those results. So I think that's a great benefit. In terms of trying to foster people to teach this, what's rather strange to me, so within UK universities, within year 1 of the undergraduate course, typically students are taught to create a research report, and they do it in 2 stages. They write their introduction and method, submit it, get feedback, and then they go off and write their results and discussion, submit it, and get their final mark. And this makes me laugh in a way, because it is the registered report format. And then somehow, as we get to the undergraduate dissertation, it's lost somewhere, and that doesn't happen anymore. And I know there's a few centres and institutions in the UK who actually do registered reports for MSc courses. So for example, Cardiff University, they try out that registered report format, more in the way of students aren't typically submitting to journals, but that's how the assessment looks. And I think that students are very amenable to this, and they get really excited about these movements. And part of the problem is the people who've been in the field for a long time who don't want to change the way that they're being taught. And I was thinking and reflecting about this just this morning, and I hope in 10 years that the grassroots will have grown up and this will be the norm. It's about trying to convince people that the barriers that they suggest are typically myths. And like Sam said with this Google document of potential barriers around pre-registration, when you really dig down, they're not very robust questions and arguments anyway. So for me, right now it's about educating researchers and training them to see this in action. New things are scary for everyone, and if we can just reduce that barrier, hopefully then people will want to teach this. It'll become the norm of what they do, and that will naturally trickle down. But yeah, as a teacher of this, and one of not many in my institution as well, it's quite tricky. I think people just, they know how they've always taught, and it takes time and effort to change that. But sometimes we absolutely have to go with the change.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question. I just wanted you, because this actually brought us to your book that I really want to hear more, but I think we can take a question, the last question, and we can talk about the book later. So the question is, what are the chances that the journal I choose will not accept the recommended register report? Okay, what are the chances that the journal will accept? For example, if I have a developmental study, then I would not expect the addiction research journal to accept it. But can it be more subtle in that the journal decides how they don't like my study topic and won't publish it? Thanks.
Yeah, fantastic. So this is something I did not say, so apologies. So when you choose the end journal, you must check that it's within the scope. So for example, if you had a developmental study, addiction research and theory wouldn't be the best place for that. And nor would you really want to publish there, because the readership would be wrong as well. It would be inconsistent with the people that you want to be reading your paper. So as long as it's within the journal's scope, they cannot then turn around and say, well, we were a PCI friendly journal, but we now reject it for whatever reason. If they do, that actually goes against our guidelines and the relationship we have between PCI registered reports and the journal. And that would be flagged, and then we would have discussions with that journal. So I'm not going to say that it'll never happen. It shouldn't. But if it did, then there would be conversations that went on, because as long as it's within their scope, if they're signed up to be a PCI friendly journal, then they have accepted the fact that they will publish that paper without the need for additional peer review. And again, if you look on the PCI registered reports website, there's a lot of information about this and facts which can go into more detail about that as well.
Okay, I think our event has come to the end. Thank you for joining us, Charlotte, and thank you all for coming today. This talk will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. And finally, I'd like to encourage you to check upcoming Riot talks on our website and Twitter. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.